I think when researching firms, I think what people forget is you shouldn't just apply to every single firm that you know offers a solicitor apprenticeship. It is probably the best way to get yourself rejected from a lot of firms, because what happens is you end up using a very generic answer. I think the first thing you need to do is take a look at different firm websites. The firm website is always the best place to start. It has a lot of information about the firm, and it's also client facing. So it has on the firm's website what the firm wants clients to understand about them and what they specialize in. So I think you need to really take it back to the basics and think, okay, what does this firm offer in terms of the type of law, and what types of law am I interested in? So, for example, there is something called a full service law firm, and there is something else called a specialist law firm. And when I first started applying, I had absolutely no idea what any of this meant, and it was only through the process that I started to understand. So, a full service law firm offers all types of law. So, for example, they'll also have a family law practice, whereas a specialist law firm will only offer certain types of law. So, for example, Simmons and Simmons specializes in certain areas, and therefore those are the different sectors that we work in. And if you're not very interested in those sectors, then Simmons and Simmons is probably not the right firm for you.
When I
So
was
that
applying, you really need to make sure that you're not just looking at the website and thinking, okay, wow, Lewis Silkin have won Law Firm of the Year. Wow, you write that down as a statement. But you really need to be thinking, what does that mean to you? And what is that going to mean for your apprenticeship? And at the start, I was applying, I think my first ever firm that I applied to was like Mishcon, and I was like, writing like 10 different things of why I like the firm, and like writing not very much, but like a lot about them. But actually, what I found really worked for me was actually just writing three, maximum four different things of why I like the firm, and then really going in depth. And so maybe for you guys applying for this year, it could be, okay, why Lewis Silkin? Oh, we've won Law Firm of the Year. Okay, amazing. What does that mean for you as an apprentice? And then using the chains of reasoning. So, oh, maybe more clients want to work with us because we're seen as Law Firm of the Year. That might mean that as an apprentice, you're going to be working on better projects because we're gonna have more interesting clients. And that is, yeah, just that like chain of reasoning that if you do like geography or history A level or even GCSE, they really hammer that into you, thinking, so what, so what, so what? Okay, the firm's revenue has gone up. So what, more profit, so what, they can invest in more sectors and expand into new offices. Oh, they've opened a new office in Spain. So what? They've got clients over there, so they're going to make more, I don't know, business or something. So it's just really having that chain of reasoning.
And ask, what tips do you have for aspiring solicitor apprentices for identifying what firm is a good fit for them? If we start with, should we start with Kuthar?
Sure. Thank you, Finn, and Noel enjoys some fantastic answers and content there. I can see why you're apprentices already. And I do agree with a lot of sort of the things that you've touched on in terms of sort of finding the right firm for you, or to pick on sort of Finn's question. I mean, there is a wealth of information and resources out there, and it probably does feel a little bit overwhelming at first. But I would, the first thing I always tell people, it is not a massive spot the difference exercise. So yes, to Nawal and George's point, you should be understanding sort of what is the USP, the type of work, the types of clients that that firm is working on, the jurisdictions, or sort of, for example, or the geographies that they're sort of present in. But my sort of big tip is sort of do a bit of a deep dive in terms of the areas that you come across it, whether it's on their sort of general sort of careers website or firm website, or some of the resources that the panel's already sort of suggested, things like Legal Cheek, um, all about law, whatever it might be. Idens newsletter, I also read, George, every week. I've subscribed to that, and it comes to my work email, and I read it every Wednesday morning. It's a really good resource in terms of finding out sort of the types of deals that these firms are working on, and then doing a bit of a deep dive in the areas that sort of personally interest you.
So I'm
So
going to bring
if
it right back to basics and just talk about why I think it is important that you look at it, because a lot of your friends might not be considering apprenticeships, they'll be looking at going to uni. And I think actually, if you use a similar approach to how you're looking at your law firm, I think that's going to help you, because you are going to be in these firms for at the very least 6 years. Or like me, I joined my firm 25 years ago. So, choose well. But then look at, going back to basics, look at things like geography. So, do you want to be in London, or do you want to be in the regions, or in another city? You might even go a bit deeper than that. I mean, the firm that I work at, we work in a 300-year-old old building in the West End, overlooking lots of green space. That might be what you like. Or you might have in your head this idea or a dream of working in a big glossy skyscraper further over in the city. So kind of have a sense of that and look about where these firms are. Think about the size of the firm. So the Farrers we've got around 600 people. The other firms that we've got on have got a range of people up to probably thousands, which means that that gives a different type of culture and the way that you will be represented there at the firm. So have a think through that as well. I'd also think about the structure of the apprenticeship. So like all your friends looking at the course that they're going to be doing at uni, have a look at what the structure is over your 6 years. So at Farrers, the way that we structure it is that the first 2 years, our apprentices are in our business services team. So they get used to being in an office, they rotate around those teams, they get a sense of a law firm as a business before we let them loose on the legal teams in year 3. And then they do 2 years there working as a paralegal, and then in the final 2 years they're treated like a trainee solicitor and do a rotation around the firm in that way. So have a look again at what the other firms out there offer to see if the structure of the apprenticeship is going to work for you.
George, can I come to you first on that one?
Yeah, sure. I was a pretty bad student. I applied to as many as I could. I don't want to leave any opportunity unturned. Osborne Clark have opened. Oh, quick, let's apply. Farrell and Co have opened. Oh, quick, let's apply. Literally, I was applying to everywhere, and I regretted it. Well, I didn't regret it because I got an apprenticeship in the end, fortunately. But I applied to like 29, I think it was in the end. Now, on top of that, you want to be going to the gym, you need to be revising for your A levels, you want to be going to your friends' 18th birthday parties, because that's when you all turn 18 in year 13. And there was a lot to handle. But I think what definitely helped me was organization. So having what was, to start with, a very messy spreadsheet, and then tracking every single stage. And so, okay, written application, tick, the psychometric test, the video interview, then the assessment center, and not losing track of where you've gotten up to. Especially a lot of firms still do video interviews. I remember I very nearly missed for a while the video interview deadline. It literally only give you like 3-4 days, and you've put that much effort in already with the written application. You don't want to be throwing a opportunity down the drain just because you can't keep track of when the video interview closes, because these firms do not take any excuse for a late application. Once it's closed, it's closed, which is fair enough. So on hindsight, I think looking back, I personally recommend around 15 applications, probably around half of what I've done. I think anything over 15 or even 12, I think you start to lose the quality of application, especially with written.
I tried to look at what firms were open and to see which ones I was interested in. The end, I applied to about 7 firms, which was definitely very manageable. But I think the advice that I would give is a little bit different. I think rather than having a set number, is that you shouldn't do it as a set number, because there's no magic number. I know one person who only applied to 1 firm and by some sort of sheer luck managed to get that single firm. And I know other people who've applied for 30 firms and they've only got that one offer out of it. So it's kind of very all or nothing in terms of how many firms. I think rather than having a set number, you should do it on a rolling basis. So you should definitely not start with anything more than 10 firms, and even then you should not do all of those in one day, because the quality is not going to be there. I did it almost an application a week, and that gave me enough time to kind of get into the firm, understand what it is, and also decide if I was still interested in the firm by the end of it, because you're not going to know if you're interested in the firm just through one website or one LinkedIn post. You're going to have to do a bit of a deep dive before you actually decide, this is a firm that I am actually interested in. So what I would do is I would start with the first couple of firms, and then if I get rejected, I would add another firm onto that list, and then I would go.
How about you? How did you sort of balance making applications and study? I'm assuming you had some whizzy AI product that set out your schedule for you.
Oh, I wish, Paul. I wasn't as savvy back then. No, I definitely echo Noel's points with really reserving an evening, being like, right, tonight I'm gonna revise these topics. Tomorrow I'm gonna do some of my apprenticeship applications. And I also really think, because when looking back, I very much was like, oh, the deadline's tonight, let's cram in another application and then do it all at once. But if you can, really plan out all the deadlines, because I think the written application is definitely the heaviest part of the process. And it gets easier as you go along because you can use your answers for your written application to help prepare for the interview and etc. But really making sure you're doing it little and often. I think if you come back to it like a week later application, you'll probably notice loads of mistakes and loads of things that you want to change. And even just getting your parents or a teacher or anyone, literally anyone, to look over it and be like, wait, what? That does not make sense. I'd change that. And even if they have no idea about law firms, just like the readability and the flow of the application, because if you keep coming back to it with tired eyes, you like almost ignore the mistakes, but the recruitment people are very much looking at it with fresh eyes, and they're just going to spot the mistakes like straight away. So yeah, I'd recommend that, and then also just being really diligent. I felt like I had to always be productive in year 13, and that I can't have a night off, well, because a night off could be another apprenticeship application. I was such like a nerd about it, but you do definitely need to have some time off. And even just like when you have the time off, maybe don't watch TV, don't watch a podcast or anything, don't do anything. Literally just like go for a walk, because that's going for a walk with no music, no podcast is when I find I can have the best thoughts and the best creative moments. If I'm struggling for LinkedIn post ideas, I'll go for a walk and do that, and then suddenly loads will come rushing in. So you've got to almost like force that upon yourself, and yeah, make yourself bored intentionally to then get good ideas for like your apprenticeship applications.
How can they embed that and distill the key points from their research into written applications? If we start with Catherine on that one, please.
I think, George, I think you made a really good point before. I think it was George, tell me if it was, about narrowing it down to kind of 3 points. Sorry if it wasn't you, George, but not to go kind of over the top in it. Just think of, just kind of take what you can, look at the main things, so that, the type of law, the culture, the history, whatever it might be, and then go deep on those, and then replicate that in your application. I think that's probably the way to go.
That's brilliant. Thank you. If I come to Kuthra on that.
Yeah, sure. I would say, sort of in the same way that you're doing at school at the moment, is sort of really referring back to it as like an exam question. So I remember when I was in school, sometimes, depending not and for my A levels, I did sort of chemistry and biology too. No well, but I also did English literature, and I remember sort of depending on which stage I got to in my A level, sometimes those questions can be quite long, and you always have to like break down the question, almost highlight the bits as to what is it actually asking me, and then almost treat it in the same way you would any exam question, because typically the clues are in the question itself. I mean, in early careers as a recruiter, honestly, I want you all to do well. It makes my job so much easier when you're all fantastic. So I want so that there are some clues in there, whether it's in the application questions themselves or in an interview a little bit later down the line. Interviews might be a little bit easier because we can ask you follow-up questions, but I would treat it like you would an exam question. If you're not hitting all the bits that you've highlighted when you're sort of reading the question, you probably haven't answered the question. And I know sometimes when you're writing your answers, you might want to sort of add sort of really, really nice, eloquent bits because they sound really, really nice. And then when you're rereading it, if it's not adding value or it's not answering the question, you can just edit it out. So don't sort of waste your word count just writing things that sound pretty. I know it's really painful. I remember doing that in my English literature exam. They're like, oh, it sounds so good, but I have to, get on with my time. So I would treat it the same. What is the exam question? What is it asking of me? And you'll find pretty much in early careers processes, we're not very subtle about it. We know what we're looking for, and so we're asking it on the face of it. So there is, we're not trying to catch you out. There's no sort of cloaks and daggers. We've asked, the question itself probably will represent the skill or the competency or the motivation question that we're after. So take a second to really think about it.